In the world of royal protocols and carefully orchestrated public appearances, where every gesture is planned and every smile is rehearsed, sometimes the most revealing moments happen when the cameras aren't rolling and the adults aren't watching. What if we told you that a 7-year-old princess once pulled off something so unexpected, so perfectly timed, and so authentically human that it would change how the entire world saw her forever? What if this moment, hidden from the public eye for months, revealed not just the true character of Princess Charlotte, but also exposed the real dynamics within one of the world's most watched families? This isn't about another royal wave or a perfectly posed photograph. This is about a moment of pure childhood genius that happened in the shadows of Kensington Palace, involving a secret plan, a grandmother's wisdom, and a little girl who proved that sometimes the smallest gestures can have the biggest impact. The story you're about to read reveals how Princess Charlotte, when she thought no one was watching, demonstrated a level of emotional intelligence and compassion that left even the most seasoned royal staff members speechless. Get ready to discover the hidden moment that shows us exactly why this young princess might just be the most extraordinary member of her generation, and why this particular day changed everything for those who witnessed it. The morning of March 15th started like any other Tuesday at Kensington Palace. Princess Charlotte, then 7 years old, was having her usual breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast soldiers when she overheard something that would set the entire day's events into motion. Her nanny, Maria Teresa Turian Baralo, was speaking in hushed tones with one of the household staff members near the kitchen entrance, unaware that Charlotte's sharp ears were picking up every word. "The Duchess has been feeling quite overwhelmed lately," Maria whispered, glancing around to ensure they weren't being overheard. "She's been trying to balance everything with the new charity commitments, the children's schedules, and Prince William's increasing royal duties." "I've never seen her look so tired." Charlotte continued eating her breakfast, but her mind was racing. She had noticed that her mother Catherine had been different lately. The usual bedtime stories had been shorter, the morning hugs felt rushed, and there had been several phone calls that ended with her mother looking worried and rubbing her temples. Charlotte might have been young, but she possessed an unusual ability to read the emotions of people around her, a trait that had been noted by palace staff since she was a toddler. After breakfast, Charlotte was supposed to spend the morning with her governess working on her French lessons, but her mind kept wandering back to what she had heard. She thought about the previous evening when her mother had tucked her into bed. Catherine had sat on the edge of Charlotte's four-poster bed for what seemed like only a few seconds before kissing her forehead and whispering, "Sleep well, my darling," in a voice that sounded different somehow, tired and distant. As Charlotte practiced her French pronunciation, she began formulating a plan. She had always been observant, noting how her great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, had a particular way of making people feel special during their brief encounters. Charlotte had watched the Queen's technique during family gatherings, seeing how she would focus entirely on whoever was speaking to her, how she would ask specific questions that showed she was truly listening, and how she had a way of making even the shortest conversation feel meaningful.
The idea that began forming in Charlotte's 7-year-old mind was both simple and profound.
She wanted to do something special for her mother, but not in the way that adults usually plan special things. She didn't want to make a drawing or pick flowers from the garden. She wanted to give her mother something more valuable than that. She wanted to give her the gift of feeling truly seen and appreciated. During lunch, Charlotte carefully observed her mother's behavior. Catherine went through all the motions of their usual mealtime routine, asking about Charlotte's morning lessons and listening to Prince George talk about his upcoming school project. But Charlotte noticed the small details that others might miss: the way her mother's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, how she pushed her food around on her plate more than she actually ate it, and how she seemed to be somewhere else mentally even when she was responding to their conversations. After lunch, Charlotte excused herself, telling her mother she wanted to play in her room for a while. But instead of playing, she began putting her plan into action. She knew that her mother had a brief break in her schedule every Tuesday afternoon between 2 and 3 o'clock, a rare hour when Catherine wasn't scheduled for official duties, phone calls, or meetings. It was during this time that Catherine usually retreated to her private sitting room to catch up on personal correspondence or simply have a quiet cup of tea. Charlotte had been thinking about this moment all morning, and she knew exactly what she wanted to do. But first, she needed to gather some intelligence about her mother's current state of mind. She decided to conduct what she thought of as a reconnaissance mission, something she had learned about from listening to her father and Uncle Harry talk about their military experiences. Quietly, Charlotte made her way through the palace corridors, moving with the stealth that only children seem to naturally possess. She had explored every inch of Kensington Palace since she was old enough to walk, and she knew exactly which floorboards creaked and which doors made noise when opened. Her destination was the small alcove near her mother's sitting room, a spot where she could observe without being seen. What Charlotte witnessed during her careful observation broke her young heart in a way that would stay with her forever. Through the slightly open door, she could see her mother sitting alone in her favorite armchair, still dressed in the elegant navy blue dress she had worn for her morning engagements. Catherine was holding a cup of tea, but it sat untouched in her hands as she stared out the window with an expression of exhaustion and worry that Charlotte had never seen before. But it was what happened next that truly motivated Charlotte to action. Her mother set down the teacup, put her face in her hands, and for just a few moments allowed herself the luxury of looking as tired and overwhelmed as she actually felt. Charlotte watched as her mother's shoulders shook slightly, and she realized that her mother was crying quietly, believing she was completely alone. In that moment, Charlotte understood something that many adults never learn, that sometimes the strongest people need care and comfort just as much as anyone else. She had seen her mother comfort others countless times during their visits to hospitals and charities, had watched Catherine offer support and kindness to people who were struggling, but she had never considered that her mother might need that same kind of care in return.
Charlotte retreated from her hiding spot, her mind now completely focused on her mission.
She spent the next hour carefully preparing for what she would later think of as the most important conversation of her young life. She practiced what she would say, thought about the questions she wanted to ask, and most importantly, she thought about how she could make her mother feel the way Queen Elizabeth made people feel. Truly seen, truly heard, and truly valued. As the afternoon sun began to cast longer shadows through the palace windows, Charlotte knew it was time to put her plan into action. She took a deep breath, smoothed down her school uniform, and walked purposefully toward her mother's sitting room. What happened next would not only surprise everyone who witnessed it, but would also reveal the remarkable depth of emotional intelligence that this young princess possessed. The stage was set for a moment that would demonstrate how sometimes the most powerful acts of love come from the most unexpected sources, and how a child's pure intention to comfort someone they love can create a memory that lasts a lifetime. Charlotte stood outside her mother's sitting room for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only 30 seconds. She could hear the gentle ticking of the antique clock in the hallway and the distant sound of gardeners working outside. Her small hand was raised to knock on the door, but something made her pause. Instead of knocking, she decided to do something that was completely against royal protocol. She simply walked in quietly without announcement. Catherine was still sitting in her armchair, though she had composed herself and was now holding a book, pretending to read. When she heard the soft footsteps, she looked up and immediately put on the bright smile that she wore so naturally in public. "Hello, sweetheart," she said, closing the book and setting it aside. "Did you finish playing in your room already?" But Charlotte didn't answer the question. Instead, she walked directly to where her mother was sitting and did something completely unexpected. She climbed onto Catherine's lap, wrapped her small arms around her mother's neck, and whispered, "Mummy, I think you need a cuddle." Catherine was surprised by the directness of Charlotte's action, but she welcomed the embrace, wrapping her arms around her daughter and breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry-scented shampoo. For a moment, they simply held each other in silence, and Catherine felt some of the tension in her shoulders begin to release. "I've been thinking," Charlotte said, pulling back just enough to look into her mother's eyes. "You always ask us how we're feeling and if we need anything, but nobody ever asks you how you're feeling." Catherine blinked in surprise. She had not expected such an observation from her 7-year-old daughter. "Oh, darling," she began, "I'm perfectly fine. Grown-ups don't need to be asked about their feelings the same way children do." But Charlotte shook her head firmly. "That's not true, Mummy. Great-Granny told me once that everyone needs someone to care about their feelings, even queens and princesses and grown-ups. She said that feelings don't go away just because you get older, they just get better at hiding." Catherine felt a lump forming in her throat. The wisdom coming from her young daughter was both touching and surprisingly accurate. "When did Great-Granny tell you that?" she asked softly. "Last Christmas," Charlotte replied matter-of-factly. "She was telling me about how important it is to notice when people need kindness, even if they don't ask for it. She said that the best way to help someone is to really see them and pay attention to what they need." Charlotte then did something that completely took Catherine by surprise. She slipped off her mother's lap and went to the small table where Catherine kept her personal items. She picked up a soft cashmere throw that was draped over a nearby chair and brought it back to her mother. "Great-Granny also told me that sometimes people need to be taken care of, even when they're the ones who usually do the taking care of," Charlotte said, carefully draping the throw over her mother's shoulders. She said that being strong doesn't mean you never need help, it means you're brave enough to accept help when someone offers it. Catherine was now fighting back tears, but these were different tears from the ones she had shed earlier. These were tears of amazement at her daughter's intuition and compassion. "Charlotte," she whispered, "how did you know that I needed this today?" Charlotte climbed back onto her mother's lap, this time settling in more comfortably. "Because I pay attention to you the same way you pay attention to me," she said simply. "I noticed that you've been looking tired and your hugs have been shorter, and you've been doing that thing where you rub your forehead when you think nobody's looking." "I do that?" Catherine asked, genuinely surprised. "You do," Charlotte confirmed. "And I also noticed that you haven't been eating all your food at dinner, and yesterday when Papa was telling his funny story about Uncle Harry, you smiled but your eyes didn't look happy." Catherine realized that her daughter had been conducting what amounted to a detailed observation of her emotional state, and the accuracy of Charlotte's assessment was both humbling and remarkable. "You notice a lot for someone so young," she said. "Great Granny says that noticing things is how you show love," Charlotte replied. "She told me that love isn't just saying nice words, it's paying attention to people and caring about what they need, even when they don't tell you." What happened next was something that Catherine would remember for the rest of her life. Charlotte began to do exactly what Catherine always did for her when she was upset or tired. She started gently stroking her mother's hair, the same soothing motion that Catherine used when Charlotte had nightmares or wasn't feeling well. "Tell me about your day, Mummy," Charlotte said softly, using almost the exact words that Catherine used with her children every evening. "Tell me about the good parts and the hard parts." Catherine felt herself melting into her daughter's care. She had spent so many years being the caregiver, the one who offered comfort and support to everyone around her, that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to be on the receiving end of such attention. "Well," she began hesitantly, "I had a meeting this morning about the new children's hospital project. Was it a good meeting or a hard meeting?" Charlotte asked, continuing to stroke her mother's hair.
"It was a bit of both," Catherine admitted.
"I'm excited about the project, but there are so many details to work out, and I want to make sure we do everything right. Sometimes I worry that I won't be able to help as much as I want to." Charlotte nodded seriously, as if she completely understood the weight of such concerns. "That sounds like a very big worry to carry around," she said. "No wonder you've been looking tired." They talked for the next 20 minutes, with Charlotte asking gentle questions and offering the kind of innocent wisdom that only children possess. She listened as her mother shared her concerns about balancing her royal duties with being present for her children. She nodded when Catherine admitted that sometimes she felt like she wasn't doing enough in any area of her life. "Mummy," Charlotte said when her mother had finished sharing. "Do you know what I think?" "What do you think, sweetheart?" "I think you're doing a really good job, even when it feels hard, and I think it's okay to feel tired sometimes. Papa gets tired too, and even Great Granny gets tired. It doesn't mean you're not doing good work, it just means you're working really hard." Charlotte then reached into her pocket and pulled out something she had prepared earlier, a small piece of paper folded into a tiny square. "I wrote something for you," she said, unfolding the paper to reveal her careful 7-year-old handwriting. Catherine read the note aloud. "Dear Mummy, thank you for taking care of everyone. Today I want to take care of you. Love, Charlotte." Below the words was a drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall and one small, both with crowns on their heads and big smiles. The simplicity and sincerity of the gesture broke through the last of Catherine's emotional defenses. She pulled Charlotte close and held her tightly, finally allowing herself to accept the comfort that her daughter was offering. "Thank you, my darling," she whispered. "This is exactly what I needed today." As they sat together in the afternoon light, wrapped in the cashmere throw, and holding each other close, both mother and daughter understood that something special had happened between them. Charlotte had successfully given her mother the gift she had planned, a moment of feeling truly seen and cared for, while Catherine had received an unexpected lesson in allowing herself to be vulnerable and accepting help from an unlikely source. The moment was interrupted by a soft knock on the door, followed by Prince William's voice asking if he could come in. What he found when he entered the room was a scene that would stay with him forever. His wife and daughter cuddled together in the armchair, both looking more peaceful and content than he had seen either of them in weeks. Prince William's entrance into the sitting room created a pause in the intimate moment between mother and daughter, but Charlotte, with the confidence that only children possess, immediately took charge of the situation. "Papa," she announced from her perch on Catherine's lap, "Mummy needed some taking care of today, so I've been looking after her." William's expression shifted from curiosity to understanding as he took in the scene before him. His wife looked more relaxed than she had in weeks, and Charlotte wore the satisfied expression of someone who had accomplished exactly what she had set out to do. "Have you now?" he said, settling into the chair across from them. "And how exactly have you been looking after Mummy?" Charlotte proceeded to give William a detailed account of her afternoon's activities, explaining her observations about Catherine's tiredness, her decision to provide comfort, and her implementation of what she called the great granny method of caring for people. As she spoke, William found himself amazed not just by his daughter's emotional intelligence, but by the sophisticated way she had approached what amounted to a caregiving mission. "She's been wonderful," Catherine added, her voice still soft from the emotional afternoon. "I had no idea I was being so transparent about feeling overwhelmed." "You weren't being transparent to adults," William observed with a smile. "But Charlotte has always been particularly good at reading situations that grown-ups miss." What happened next surprised everyone, including Charlotte herself. William stood up and walked over to where his wife and daughter were sitting. Instead of joining them or asking Charlotte to move, he simply said, "Charlotte, do you think there's room in that chair for one more person who wants to take care of Mummy?" Charlotte's face lit up with delight. She had not expected her father to want to join in her caregiving mission, but she immediately saw the value in having reinforcements. "Yes," she said seriously, "but you have to do it properly. You can't just sit here, you have to actually pay attention and ask about feelings." For the next hour, the three of them created something that none of them had experienced before, a family moment where traditional roles were temporarily suspended, and everyone was allowed to both give and receive care. Charlotte maintained her position as the leader of this caregiving operation, directing both her parents in what she had learnt about proper attention and comfort. She showed William how to stroke Catherine's hair properly, explained the importance of asking follow-up questions about feelings, and demonstrated the correct way to arrange the cashmere throw for maximum comfort. William followed his daughter's instructions with the same seriousness he would bring to a state function, and Catherine found herself laughing genuinely for the first time in weeks. "Now, Papa," Charlotte instructed, "you need to tell Mummy something good about her day. But it has to be something specific, not just 'you did great.' Great Granny told me that specific compliments are much better than general ones." William thought for a moment, then said, "Catherine, I was really impressed with how you handled the questions from the journalists this morning about the hospital project. You explained everything so clearly, and you could tell that they really understood your vision for helping the children." Charlotte nodded approvingly. "That's good, Papa. Now Mummy should say how that made her feel." Catherine played along with her daughter's therapeutic session, sharing how meaningful it was to feel that her work was making a difference. As the afternoon progressed, something remarkable happened. The structure that Charlotte had created for taking care of her mother naturally evolved into a deeper family conversation about their individual challenges, their shared goals, and their appreciation for each other. Prince George and Prince Louis eventually found their way to the sitting room, drawn by the unusual sound of extended laughter and conversation coming from their mother's private space. Instead of being asked to leave or play quietly, they were welcomed into what Charlotte proudly called the caring circle. Charlotte took it upon herself to explain to her brothers what they were doing and why it was important. "Sometimes grown-ups need taking care of too," she told them with the authority of someone who had just discovered an important life truth. "And we're really good at taking care of people because we pay attention to feelings." George, being older, initially felt skeptical about the whole enterprise, but he quickly found himself drawn into the warmth and intimacy of the moment. Louis, at his young age, simply enjoyed being included in something that felt special and important. Under Charlotte's guidance, both boys contributed to what became an impromptu family meeting about emotions, support, and the importance of noticing when people need care. What made this moment truly extraordinary was not just Charlotte's initial instinct to comfort her mother, but her ability to create a structure that allowed everyone to participate in caring for each other. She had somehow intuited that taking care of one person could become a family activity that strengthened all of their relationships. As evening approached and it came time for dinner, Catherine realized that she felt genuinely refreshed and reconnected to her family in a way that she hadn't experienced in months. The weight of her responsibilities hadn't disappeared, but she no longer felt like she was carrying it alone. The impact of Charlotte's afternoon intervention extended far beyond that single day. In the weeks that followed, the entire family began implementing what they jokingly called Charlotte's caring protocols, regular check-ins about feelings, specific appreciation for each other's efforts, and the understanding that everyone, regardless of age or role, sometimes needs to be taken care of. Catherine found herself better able to ask for help when she needed it, knowing that her children had learned to see requesting support as a sign of wisdom rather than weakness. William became more attuned to the subtle signs of stress in his family members, often catching situations before they became overwhelming. And Charlotte, proud of her successful intervention, continued to refine her observation skills and her methods for offering comfort to others. The story of what Charlotte accomplished that Tuesday afternoon eventually became family legend, told and retold at gatherings and referenced whenever someone needed reminding that care and attention could come from the most unexpected sources. But perhaps more importantly, it became a foundational memory for Charlotte herself, proving to her that she had the ability to make a real difference in people's lives through simple acts of observation, compassion, and courage. Years later, when Charlotte would face her own challenges and responsibilities as a member of the royal family, she would remember this afternoon as the moment she learned that true leadership sometimes means knowing when to step up and offer care to those who are usually the caregivers. She would remember that paying attention to people's needs is one of the most powerful ways to show love, and that sometimes the smallest gestures can have the most profound impact on someone's life. The hidden moment that no one was supposed to witness became the foundation for a family's deeper understanding of how to support each other, and evidence that sometimes children possess exactly the wisdom that adults need to learn. In giving her mother the gift of feeling truly seen and cared for, Charlotte had given her entire family something even more valuable, the knowledge that they could always count on each other for comfort, understanding, and love.